Hello and welcome to the penultimate video in ADMS 1010 exploring the functions of business. In this week we are looking at business for the future, and in this video we will look at the relationship between innovation, entrepreneurship, and knowledge creation. We're going to start this video by briefly discussing the differences and similarities between entrepreneurship and innovation, where the two meet and where they diverge. In his article on the discipline of innovation, Drucker notes that all the entrepreneurial people he has ever met, few have the characteristics of an entrepreneurial personality as it is often conceived. We tend to think of entrepreneurial people as being risk takers par excellence, putting all their resources at stake on uncertain or unlikely chances or opportunities, which only occasionally pay off. Under this conception, it is the risky, operating at the edge nature of the entrepreneurial spirit that leads to change. However, Drucker disagrees. While the actions and temperaments of individuals are certainly important to entrepreneurialism, that is, the process of creating new wealth-producing activities or products, developing new processes, or modifying existing ones in new and innovative ways, entrepreneurship actually boils down to innovation, and it is not specific to any size or age of firm, nor a property solely of risk takers. While some risk-taking is certainly important, what is more common to entrepreneurship is a conscious and purposeful search for opportunities to innovate. These opportunities, Drucker describes, arise from several different sources, broadly distinguished between those arising inside versus outside a company or industry. Inside the company or industry, he notes four opportunities: unexpected outcomes, incongruities, process needs, and industry and market changes. Unexpected outcomes can arise when an existing product or process produces unexpected successes or failures. Sometimes unexpected successes can be easy to miss. We tend to focus on the outcomes in relation to the original expectations for the product or process in question. However, sometimes, as Drucker argues, using the unexpected interest in computing in public libraries in the early 20th century, we may find that the product or process meets needs we had not originally intended. Being able and prepared to take advantage of these opportunities is important to being innovative. Drucker describes incongruities as being cases where older traditional methods of doing things persevere, despite there being a ready alternative that just needs a tiny bit of developing to substitute. Here he notes the example of the cataract surgery procedure and the enzyme that could replace the manual cutting of the nerve. All that was needed was to add preservative to the enzyme. Process needs refer to, in part, situations where one can easily anticipate a future need or product or process modification and then act accordingly to provide it. He notes the example of the automatic switchboard, since without it, every woman in America would have had to been working as a switchboard operator in order to keep up with expected demand. Lastly, Drucker notes that entrepreneurs take advantage of current or foreseeable structural changes in the industry they are engaged in. Here he notes the example of Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette, who were pioneers in institutional investing in the mid-20th century. Similar opportunities have risen in other industries that grew quickly in the 20th century, such as healthcare and telecommunications. Innovative players can often outmaneuver existing companies that spend too much time protecting what they are familiar with rather than seek to stay abreast or ahead of major industry structural developments. Several processes outside a firm or industry can also create an opportunity for innovation. Here Drucker notes demographic changes, changes in perception, and the arrival or creation of new knowledge. Being able to anticipate how demographic changes, such as higher levels of education, less children, or an aging workforce, will impact the existing structure and process in an industry is the mark of an entrepreneurial and innovative company. Here, Drucker notes an example of the example of the early investments into robotics by the Japanese in response to an anticipated shortfall in the supply of unskilled labor. Drucker's next opportunity is a bit of an odd one. He seems to advocate for encouraging managers to stop seeing positive developments as glass half full situations and instead to see them as glass half empty. When he is talking about the improvements in healthcare leading to more concern about ever-increasing numbers of maladies, for example. But in practice, it works both ways. The point here is never to rest on one's laurels. Don't perceive positive or negative developments as being just that, but look for the flip side opportunity. The computer was originally seen as a threat, but eventually came to be perceived as a great opportunity. Lastly, Drucker notes that the development of new knowledge, either through scientific or technological progress, or the combination of discrete pieces of new information into a more comprehensive whole, are critical components in innovation as well. Here he gives numerous examples where entrepreneurial business people brought together an array of different pieces of knowledge to create successful and innovative businesses. Drucker concludes by arguing that successful innovators should analyze all possible sources of new opportunities, even if it seems that they may not be directly relevant. This requires them to use both sides of their brain, the analytical side and the social side, reviewing figures and data as well as talking to people. Successful innovations need to be simple and focused, specifically targeted around one use case, because if they are not simple, new things can confuse people who are used to the existing way of doing things. The best praise that an innovation can receive is when people realize how obvious it was after the fact. Effective innovators also often start small and do not attempt to revolutionize an entire industry at once. All of these characteristics are important to entrepreneurship and innovation, but Drucker concludes with an important final point. When all is said and done, what innovation requires is hard, focused, purposeful work. If diligence, persistence, and commitment are lacking, talent, ingenuity, and knowledge are of no avail. Now let's turn to the other reading this week, Nanaka's article on the knowledge creating company. There are a lot of connections in this article with the study of innovation, but Nanaka comes at the topic from a slightly different angle. For Nanaka, knowledge creation is a key determinant of innovation and competitiveness. But what is knowledge creation? To answer that question, it helps to distinguish between two types or perspectives on information and knowledge within a company. Nanaka starts by noting the traditional Western orientation, wherein information and knowledge is expected to be hard, that is to say quantifiable, representable by data, principles that can be codified, and so forth. This type of knowledge in a company is explicit, as Nanaka argues. The knowledge and information is out there for everyone to be seen, for everyone to see, and often being written down or documented in official manuals or reports. Conversely, knowledge can also be tacit as well. This is the type of knowledge people have that is difficult to put into words or write down in a systematic fashion. It can be highly personal, an informal understanding of how something should be done that is developed over years of engagement with the practice. This kind of tacit knowledge can accordingly be either technical, like a craft person's ability in their trade, or cognitive, contained in mental models and beliefs and perspectives on how something can or should be done. This is the type of knowledge that Nanaka suggests is characteristic of Eastern companies. Based on these two types of knowledge, Nanaka lays out four possible channels of knowledge creation. Basically, the transfer or diffusion of knowledge from one person to another, or to the firm or society at large. Tacit to tacit knowledge transfer is educational, and often found in training or master and apprentice situations. Here, knowledge is transferred, but nothing particularly new or innovative is created. Similarly, explicit to explicit knowledge creation involves combining bits and pieces of hard information into a larger, coherent picture of its meaning or significance. But again, nothing particularly new or innovative is created in this process. Where knowledge is created in a way that leads to innovation is when tacit knowledge is translated into explicit knowledge, where Nanaka notes the example of translating the tacit knowledge of bread baking into explicit design principles for an effective bread maker. And then again, when that new explicit knowledge is translated back into tacit knowledge, when employees of the bread machine making company all eventually internalize the principles of effective bread making. This process of knowledge creation goes beyond bread making, of course. As Nanaka notes, it has larger implications for society as well. He writes, because tacit knowledge includes mental models and beliefs in addition to know-how, moving from the tacit to the explicit is really a process of articulating one's vision of the world, what it is and what it ought to be. When employees invent new knowledge, they are also reinventing themselves, the company, and even the world. This perspective is particularly interesting in the context of the current problems and tensions facing contemporary business, from global warming to energy system concerns to population growth to continued war and strife and social instability associated with economics and governments, and the unpredictability of financial markets. Thomas Homer Dixon's tectonic stresses are clearly problems that require innovative approaches to business and creation of new knowledge. In doing so, as Nanaka argues, we have the potential to reinvent both ourselves and our companies, as well as the world. We will conclude this video with a quick look at the courses you can take here at the School of Administrative Studies if you're interested in learning more about innovation. There are 3 courses in particular that you may find useful or interesting. ADMS 3920 on new venture and small business management, ADMS 4280 social marketing, nonprofit marketing, and corporate social responsibility, and lastly ADMS 4940 on technology management. That's it for this video. Please do check out the final video, which should be posted shortly, on the new economy.